This is CBC Here and Now.
Hurricane Sam currently passing well south of us, but some will see some breezy winds and large swells.
They avoided COVID-19 in the first waves, but now communities across central Newfoundland are finding it right at their doorsteps.
It makes me wonder why somebody would not have a shot that saves their life.
I'm Garrett Barry, and I'll bring you the latest coming up on Here and Now.
You're being asked to stay at home when sick, but who's paying?
They can't afford to stay home from work, or if they lose pay, they're not going to be able to pay their bills.
Labor advocates are calling for permanent sick leave. More on that coming up on Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. Well, the number of COVID-19 cases is down, but the number of hospitalizations is up. For the latest on the COVID situation, Peter Cowan joins us live. So Peter, let's start with today's numbers.
Yeah, over the weekend, we actually had 2 days where the number of new cases was down to single digits. That's something we hadn't seen in a while, but today the numbers took a little uptick. Let's take a look. There are 15 cases that were announced today, and like we've seen with this recent outbreaks, the bulk of them continue to be in central Newfoundland. 13 of those cases are in that area. There's just a single case each for eastern and western. So how have our numbers been trending? Well, let's take a look. So this is the 7-day average, which takes out some of those daily fluctuations. And after peaking at an average of 20 cases a day, we're down to about an average of 15. So a sign that things are starting to head in the right direction. And with what we saw from the short-term projections last week with modeling, this is what they were calling for. So not a big surprise. Now, the bigger issue is around healthcare capacity. And we now have more people in hospital than any other day except one during the pandemic. There are 14 people in hospital. You'd have to go back to April 1st at the start of the pandemic to find a time when more people were in hospital. The spike back in February from the outbreak there, not quite as many people ended up in the hospital. And should point out, all of these people are actually in the central region, and half of them are in the ICU. Now, we didn't have a briefing today, so we weren't able to ask more about the healthcare capacity in Central, but I did put some questions to Central Health about their capacity. They didn't get back to me, but we do have some numbers from early on in the pandemic. We know Central Health created 23 beds in a COVID unit in Grand Falls, Windsor, and the region has 17 ICU beds. So both of those numbers higher than the number of cases we're seeing that are needing hospitalization or more critical care. The modeling we looked at last week basically showed that the number of people in ICU would be about in this range. It's not predicting another big spike, but we'll have to see how that goes. Well, let's take a look at the latest on the 3 outbreaks we're watching in Central. The Bayvert cluster now has a total of 88 cases. There are 62 in the Twillingate and New World Island area, and there are 52 in the Bishops Falls Botwood cluster. Health officials have said cases they're seeing can be connected with others. That's why we haven't seen over the weekend or today them bringing in any additional lockdown measures. We do have those alert level changes for Bayvert and the New World Island and Twillingate areas, but officials have said they're looking at this constantly on a daily basis in other areas, but so far they don't feel it's needed. Anthony?
Thank you, Peter. That's Peter Cowan reporting live from our newsroom. Well, as case counts rise in central Newfoundland, masks are coming back on and the bubbles are shrinking. But there's something different about this wave of COVID-19. Communities without much experience from previous waves are now wrestling with outbreaks at their doorstep. Here now's Garrett Barry explains.
Mayors in central Newfoundland are calling this a wake-up call. For months, their towns benefited from good fortune. Relative to other communities, COVID-19 stayed away, but as a result, the guard was dropped. And recent news of new COVID-19 clusters has brought surprise and worry back to town.
Municipalities have been here before. So, we can follow best practices that they have done. We can follow their lead and we can learn from what they've been through. I think the biggest thing that we need to remember is that we need to listen to what's factual, because there's a lot of information that can be circulated these days through social media and different avenues that may not necessarily be factual.
This newest cluster was identified last Wednesday, spanning Bishops Falls and Botwood. That's where Mayor Scott Sevier says masks have come roaring back, even outside, and social distancing is returning to everyone's mind. Those are welcome changes, but he's urging all of the reluctant to step forward and get vaccinated.
We got our mump shots, we got our measles shots, we got our chicken pox shots. And then in this day and age, with so much travel on the go, I mean, with people traveling overseas, they had to get a shot for some type of disease or virus that's actually, or something that's in the water where you're going. And it seems so easy to get. There's not a lot of questions asked. It makes me wonder why somebody would not have a shot that saves their life.
3 more cases were linked to that Botwood Bishops Falls cluster today, but further south, it's the numbers they don't know that are causing concern. One councillor in the town of St. Albans says the lack of testing clinics in the area is making it hard to track the spread of COVID-19. Rhonda Harding says there are people in the area with flu-like symptoms, but the nearest testing center is about 2 hours away.
People want to get tested, but to drive 2 hours up over the highway is not realistic. People have to lose a day's pay. It's a 2-hour drive up, 2-hour drive back. You have to go alone if you're symptomatic. Lots of people can't do that. Lots of people can't afford to do that.
Harding is asking her friends and acquaintances to write to Central Health, urging them to open a COVID-19 testing clinic in the area. We've also asked the health authority whether they have any plans to do so. Garrett Barry, CBC News, Gander.
Well, we're expecting details this week on the help this province is sending to Alberta to deal with surging COVID-19 cases. Today, Alberta gets reinforcements from the Canadian military.
For sure, you can see it kind of wearing down on all of us because we're not doing the type of care that we generally would or what we've been trained to do.
One military critical care nurse is now on the job, and more are expected to arrive in the next few days. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney announced last week that his government was finalizing a deal for military support. The Canadian Red Cross also plans to send about 20 medical professionals to the province. Alberta has seen more than 1,000 new cases of the virus daily for several weeks, and officials have had to scramble to reassign staff to handle the growing number of patients.
Well, I started last week talking about Hurricane Sam, and I'm going to start this week talking about it as well. This is the current view of Hurricane Sam, now a Category 1 hurricane, still fairly strong. We're seeing wind gusts about 185 kilometers per hour, but as you can see, well south of the province. And as we head through the next week or so, we are going to continue to see the remnants of what was Hurricane Sam head towards Greenland. But we do have a couple of things in play. We're not totally in the clear from Sam because we are going to see some winds from this thanks to this ridge of high pressure and where Sam is currently located. These isobars, I've talked about these a number of times, but the tighter these get together, the stronger the winds. And that is what's going to happen through the day tomorrow. As we start to see some of those winds ramp up, you can see there gusts somewhere between 60 to 80 kilometers per hour. We're also going to see some large swell with that as well, but I'll get into those details when I come back.
Thank you, Ashley. As COVID-19 cases in the province rise and kids, all of them unvaccinated, as they continue to go to school, health officials are telling people to stay home if they're sick. But for many people, that's much easier said than done. Here now's Meg Roberts has more.
Is it a runny nose or is it COVID-19? Regardless, public health is asking people to stay at home if sick. But how long will you be sick for? How long will your child be sick for? And how long will you have to stay away from work, especially if your employer doesn't provide paid sick leave? The Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labor says that's a tough call for people to make.
They can't afford to stay home from work, or if they lose pay, they're not going to be able to pay their bills or feed their children. That's a pretty dangerous position, and nobody should be in that position right now.
Labor Federation presidents across the country are meeting virtually tomorrow to discuss exactly that. Newfoundland and Labrador's Federation of Labor is asking the provincial government to revise the Labor Standards Act to mandate 7 days of paid sick leave. The national plan is at least 10 days. Newfoundland and Labrador currently has 0 paid days.
Our public health measures are very different. There's new things happening in our environment and in our workplaces, and we need to make sure that all workers receive basic protection.
The provincial government told CBC News employees can use the federal funding programs such as the caregiver benefit and the recovery sickness benefit if sick. But the Federation of Labor wants to see permanent legislation. However, the province's Employers Council believes most employers in the province are providing paid sick leave or making other arrangements like working from home.
If you've got a great employee or a good employee, you want to keep that employee. So anything that an employer can do to accommodate that is not only law, but it's good business. The employee also has a duty to mitigate the impact of that. That's looking for alternative care for the child.
During the pandemic, Ontario implemented 3 days of paid sick leave in relation to COVID-19. Quebec and PEI are the only other provinces with paid sick days, and British Columbia is currently in the process of implementing that permanently. Meg Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
An investigation by the RCMP in Nova Scotia has determined there is no evidence of political interference in the case of police officer Joe Smyth. Smyth asked the Royal Canadian Mounted Police last year to investigate his complaint that former Justice Minister Andrew Parsons played a role in him being charged with obstruction of justice. Now, Smyth was convicted in 2019 over his handling of a traffic stop in 2017, but his conviction was later overturned and a new trial was ordered. Now, the matter was handed over to Nova Scotia RCMP, who found no evidence of interference.
Crews with the Provincial Department of Highways were busy picking up trash on the Outer Ring Road in St. John's yesterday. The department says they collected an estimated 40 cubic meters of litter and debris. Well, the trash included everything from a kiddie pool to a deck chair, as well as some couch cushions. Saw a barbecue on the highway myself on the weekend. Staff also inspected bridges and culverts along the highway while the road was closed, and they also put up new signage, cleaned some overpasses and ramps, and repaired the shoulder of the road in 2 different sections.
Well, 2 Nigerian Canadians went head-to-head in St. John's on the weekend in a cook-off. The culinary event was part of the province's Nigeria Week celebrations, which started on Saturday.
Yeah, both contestants are not professional chefs. They were nominated by family and friends in the community to cook 2 traditional Nigerian dishes, egusi soup as well as poundo yam.
Today we have a cook-off. It's part of our celebration of the Nigerian Week. It's kind of a way of celebrating the 61st Independence Day back home in Nigeria. But today we have a cook-off and we have contestants who are making one of the many Nigerian dishes today called egusi and poundo yam. So egusi is basically melon. That's what we call, that's the English name for egusi, right? So it's melon soup and poundo yam. So poundo yam will basically be a kind of yams back in Nigeria, and then you cook it up and then you mash it and then you pound it. Kind of looks like mashed potatoes.
Where I come from, we like to have it watery, and some have it lumpy, some have it fried before cooking, and some just add it to water, add the pepper and all the spices, and we are good to go. But one thing about egusi is it's one of the food that cut across every part of Nigeria. The northern part will cook it in a different way, the southern people cook it in a different way, but one good thing is it still have that taste, it doesn't lose its taste, and we all enjoy our egusi.
This is particular because it is a common dish amongst the 3 tribes in Nigeria. So the Hausas, the Igbos, the Yorubas, they all make this dish, but they all make it a different way, right? So you would use it in weddings, you would use it at dinners. I have kids, 2 of them. It's very important that they know where mommy comes from, because that's where they come from. It's also very important that they know what the people do, what they like, what they eat, the language they speak. So yeah, it's really important because we do not get to go back to Nigeria often. That's really expensive. Having this little community here, you know, practicing and trying to preserve all of these traditions is very important to me, because that way my kids get to see it and they kind of know exactly what it's like to be Nigerian. It's not exactly the same as being in Nigeria, but it's close, to exposing them to what it's like to be a Nigerian.
There's no loser, there's no winner here. We're just coming to just showcase our culture. This is not like you're competing for money or for car or for anything. We're just coming to show love and everything, and that's all. Overall, love is the key. So we are brothers, we're sisters. Yeah, that's it.
You are just here to have the fun.
Yeah, the fun. Yeah.
Part of the activities marking our 61st independence anniversary. So it's good. We'll cook to the best of our ability, and we hope people enjoy it.
Enjoy it. Next time you're looking for food tasters, give us a ring.
Yep.
So who won the cook-off? Well, organizers say that's going to be announced at the festival's gala, which is this coming Saturday.
Yes, events are planned throughout the week, such as financial planning seminars and movie nights for adults and kids. For a complete list of the events, visit the group's website at ncanl.ca.
Welcome to Mega Hit Video, also known as My Basement. Tonight I'll be giving you my VHS family movie night recommendations. Don't touch that dial. I'll be back.
Oh, such a beautiful weekend in St. John's this past weekend. Today, not so much.
No.
Much cooler and misty, and
it felt like fall today.
Yeah,
for
it
sure.
totally did.
And you're starting to see the leaves change color.
Yeah, and they're starting to blow off the trees, and it's really starting to change now, it feels like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, temperatures today much cooler than what we saw this weekend. Let's take a look at those daytime highs today. See some areas not even getting out of the single digits. Twillingate 8 degrees, did reach 10 in St. John's, and then those temperatures even all along the south coast, around 12 to 13 degrees today. But if you take a look at the difference in temperatures, it's 6 degrees colder in St. John's today than it was yesterday at this time, and then temperatures up across Labrador much nicer as well. On the opposite spectrum, 7 degrees warmer in Happy Valley, Goose Bay today. And the reason for that is this big ridge of high pressure, bringing in some lovely temperatures for parts of Labrador. But we're going to pay attention over at least the next 24 hours to what is now Hurricane Sam, but will transition to post-tropical as we head through the evening hours and overnight tonight. We are going to see some windy conditions with this one as these area of high pressure and that area of low pressure play it out over the next 24 hours. So we're also going to see some unsettled conditions as well. We've been seeing some periods of rain today, even some drizzle as well. And that will generally be the story tonight right across the board. Southeastern Labrador will play into that as well as we get into the early morning hours. Really, anywhere along the northeast coast, we'll see that rain as we start to see the system track a little bit closer to the island. And then in behind that, though, that ridge of high pressure playing out nicely, it does look like things will be cool and clear tonight for the rest of Labrador. So Lab City going down to -3 tonight. Not a whole lot of wind to speak of, but again, those showers will continue for most of the island. And then the winds are going to start to ramp up as well. So gusts upwards of 40 to 60 kilometers per hour out of the northwest for most areas from Bonavista North through to the Avalon. And again, that is thanks to the remnants of Hurricane Sam. So tomorrow, the chance of showers will generally continue for anywhere really along the northeast coast, from the northern peninsula through to the Avalon into the afternoon. As that system moves off, it'll take that cloud cover right along with it, and then that ridge of high pressure is going to move in and keep things clear for the most part, mainly up across Labrador, but then the rest of the island will clear out as we get into the evening and overnight hours. By 9-10 o'clock tomorrow night, most skies should be clear, but just some showers will roll through late day and into the early morning hours for the Big Land. Now, the other thing with this system is we've got the hurricane well offshore, but all that strong wind is generating some swells. So as we head through the day tomorrow, we're really going to start to see those swells move in anywhere from 4 to 6 meters, it looks like at this point. These are the wind directions, so it'll be out of the northwest. But then as we head through the day on Wednesday, this northwest swell will start to peak, and we could see some, especially in those north-facing coasts, some areas seeing an upwards in excess of 7-meter waves, and then those winds will shift to the southwest through the day on Wednesday, and then the swell will move out along with it as we pretty much get into Thursday. So temperatures over the next couple of days, at least for tomorrow, still going to stay quite chilly. 10 degrees for St. John's. Those winds, like I said, out of the northwest, gusting in exposed areas from Bonavista North through to the Avalon, upwards of about 80 kilometers per hour for sure. As you head towards central, those temperatures a little bit cooler, 8-9 degrees. South coast going to stay cool, stay cloudy tomorrow, about 12 degrees for you in Harbour Breton, and then nicer weather the further west you go as that ridge of high pressure moves in. Temperatures really beautiful as well, 12 to 16 degrees is your daytime highs. Similar forecast up towards the northern peninsula, except a little bit more shower activity expected. And then as you head towards the rest of Labrador, look at that. Absolutely stunning day. This is well above where you should be sitting this time of year under that ridge of high pressure. 16 degrees and sunshine for Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Those winds generally light as well, about 20, maybe as much as 40 kilometers per hour through the day. But overall, definitely enjoy it because the temperatures are going to start to come down, but I'll get into those details when I come back.
Well, the so-called bubble popped. We're going to take a look now at the impact of COVID-19 throughout Atlantic Canada.
Yes, Nova Scotia's new proof of vaccination policy went into effect today. Almost everyone in the province must now show proof at a long list of places.
Chris O'Neill-Yates is reporting from Nova Scotia at the moment, and she has this report.
Well, starting today in Nova Scotia, if you want to eat out at a restaurant, go to a bar, a casino, go to your local gym, you're going to have to provide proof that you're fully vaccinated. And that can be obtained by the Can Immunize site through Nova Scotia Health. You'll also have to show an ID that you're actually the person presenting this information. Of course, there are a number of places where you won't have to do that. You can go shopping, you can go and have your hair or nails done. There's a long list of places as well that you don't have to present this evidence that you've been fully vaccinated. Part of this is just to get the virus under control, and the other part to get more people vaccinated here in Nova Scotia. Here's what infectious diseases specialist Dr. Lisa Barrett at Dalhousie University had to say about the province implementing this policy.
If we combine low likelihood that people have virus, proof of vaccination, and that means decreased ability to transmit as well as to be infected, then we've got a really good shot of this particular type of approach having a maximum impact on reducing both symptomatic and asymptomatic cases in our communities.
So when you go to a business requiring proof of vaccination, you can either give them a hard copy or a PDF that you have on your phone, some proof that you have had both jabs. The province intends to introduce a more electronic form of that, a QR code that you can just scan when you go to places requiring proof of vaccination. That's not happening today, but the government here says it is coming soon. Chris O'Neill-Yates, CBC News, Halifax.
As we saw in central Newfoundland last week, a church is one place that led to the spread of COVID-19, and it's a similar story in New Brunswick.
Yes, health officials there say about 10% of a network of 700 cases were connected to services. Their churches remain exempt from requiring proof of vaccination during certain services, but one New Brunswick man says that has to change.
Joe G. is blaming some local churches for encouraging anti-vaccination sentiment. He's the only person in his family who is vaccinated. Here he is speaking to CBC reporter Jacques Poitras.
Well, Perth Andover and the surrounding area is a hot zone right now for COVID cases, and it's really affecting our communities, quite substantially, and it's devastating.
And how much can you tell us about in your own family what you're seeing, what you're experiencing?
Well, it's it's in our family, and my fiance and I, we're the only ones who got vaccinated back in the spring, and we're the only ones who didn't get sick, and that left us to care for multiple family members in different homes, in 3 different places. And I've been going for about 2 weeks now, looking after everybody, doing routine checkups and running errands and getting the things that people need to help them get better. And that also includes calling 911. And just this morning, I had to call 911 for my uncle, and he's in Waterville right now, getting checked out.
And can you explain where people are getting this idea to not get vaccinated? How that's coming, where that's coming from?
I know exactly where it came from, and it's it's coming from a church. A lot of things that were said by their pastor that discouraged people from protecting themselves.
About vaccinations.
And different people who are connected with that church have explained, they've shared with me, that that pastor used this disease as a way to test people's faith in the Lord.
In what way? What was the test? How did they show that?
Don't be scared of COVID. Don't be scared of COVID. Don't wear masks. Don't social distance, and don't get vaccinated. And this is what I've been told by people who are connected with that church.
And what do you think when you hear that?
I think it's stupidity. I mean, if you want to make this a thing of religion, why not tell people that the Lord has already answered our prayers by giving us brains and by giving us science and trust in the healthcare. Jesus was a healer. People trusted Jesus. Why don't they trust these doctors that have the information that we need to protect ourselves and protect our loved ones?
There's been a lot of discussion about people who have not been vaccinated, whether they deserve some sympathy, or whether we should be angry with them, or whether we should try to convince them.
Yeah.
What's your answer to that?
Yeah, I've been accused of being angry, but there's over 300 different emotions in the English language, and I think a lot of people are confusing my physiological signs. They're confusing that for anger, but it's fear, and I'm scared to death of what's going to happen to my family members, the people that I love, and to this community. I love all my family members, and it's because that I love them that I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling.
Why have you decided to be so open about this and what's going on? You know, you might get some blowback from people in that church, or people
I don't give for blowback. That's the least of my worries right now. What I'm worried about is who else this is going to kill, and who else this is going to get sick, and who else. I don't give a rat's ass about blowback. If I stayed silent and didn't say anything at all, and it kept going, I'm more worried about my conscience than I am blowback. I don't care. If anybody gives me any blowback, then
G recorded his interview with CBC last week, and since then, his father has died from COVID-19.
Churches are not including, as we mentioned before, in New Brunswick's mandatory vaccine requirement, but the Premier has called on religious leaders to encourage vaccination of their worshippers.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Well, do you remember the days before streaming when renting a movie meant physically visiting a Blockbuster or Jumbo or Allen's Video on a Friday night? And for those of a certain age, remember when that rental was a VHS tape? One collector in St. John's has very fond memories of those days and has meticulously recreated that Blockbuster aesthetic in his basement, right down to the free popcorn. Just have a look.
Right now, you are in Mega Hit Video. Welcome to Mega Hit Video. Now that's entertainment. Well, it started as a home bar. I'm not a sports guy. I don't watch the Montreal Canadiens. I have no idea about football, but I do love movies. So as we started our reno, we really wanted to do something that was special for us. My wife's also a fan of movies. So we decided to build a video rental shop themed bar. And then it just kind of spiraled from there. I tend to spiral sometimes when I enjoy something. So here we are in Mega Hit Video now, all of a sudden.
Why is this your ultimate dream?
Well, I worked at a video store back in the early 90s. I'm dating myself. I know I look much younger. Benjamin Button. But ultimately, I always loved working at the video shop, and I've missed it ever since. I never actually felt like I stopped working there. And not only that, back in the day when you worked in a video store, you actually felt like you were part of Hollywood, right? Quentin Tarantino worked at a Blockbuster. So everybody who was at a video store, you felt like you were a part of that actual industry almost. Specifically, if you worked at one of the big chains, I mean, we all remember Blockbuster had their own entertainment awards and their own releases. So I remember that excitement, and I've never forgotten it. And I also still, in some ways, enjoy movies in the exact same manner. I always like to say people watch movies, they tend to watch them under such a skeptical lens these days. I don't. Every time I watch a movie, I'm like a 14-year-old. So I tend to enjoy almost every movie I watch because I have that almost wide-eyed innocence. I'm like Bambi watching a movie.
And these are all VHS movies. As opposed to like getting a DVD, you decided to go VHS all the way.
Absolutely. I am the most analog person you'll ever meet. I remember the march towards DVD. When I started at a video store, it was VHS. And I remember even when it went to DVD, beyond being able to hear commentaries from directors, I still preferred VHS. So I kept collecting VHS over the years, and I've had very few DVDs in my life, to be honest. I'm analog, obviously.
What is it about VHS and that experience of watching movies on tape?
Well, first off, it's slightly imperfect. And there's something that adds to the magical quality of the movie. It looks like a movie. If you watch something in 4K now, it looks the same as Doctor Who. Like, there's no delineation in your entertainment anymore. When I watch a movie, I want it to have that movie look. So I actually watch VHS all the time, and I also hook my MacBook into a VCR, into my TV, so I can actually watch VHS on the big 75-inch screen. Not the best quality, but certainly the best experience.
It's like the difference between listening to a record and streaming a song.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the things that people are starting to miss. I know records are coming back. VHS are coming back. So finally, I knew if I held on to this long enough, it would come around, just like my mom's bell-bottom pants. She's been hanging on to them for years, and she knows. So I knew it was going to come back, and people really crave that physical media again as well, right? You feel like you own something, like you're tied to it. And I think that really adds to the experience. It's just not existing in a cloud somewhere. What we've heard most is just people really having those memories, craving that connection again, but also wanting to experience it with their kids, which is something I hear over and over. My kids will never know the video store. And it seems kind of unimportant on the surface, but sometimes those things that seem in the overall scheme to be unimportant are actually some of the most important things you have. That's your memories. And people want to touch those again, I think.
Why do you think people are craving that nostalgia right now?
I think specifically COVID has really heightened it. It became an echo chamber for everybody's longing for the past, I think. It's been really difficult and being sheltered at home, and people have been missing that connection. And I think they're starting to latch onto all of the things where they remember having those connections most. So it really is that feeling of nostalgia that's really been kind of in an echo chamber of COVID in a way. So my hope is that we can somehow help fill that need for nostalgia that people have.
I'm a customer. What movies do you recommend?
Are you looking for action?
Action, yes.
Action. I'd go back to classic Stallone, Cobra. And I love when it says something like Stallone is a humongous hit. Great action. That wouldn't lie. And hey, look at that car chase on the back. So Stallone, Cobra. If you're going for date night, I'd go something with Hugh Grant, the world's most charming man. Mickey Blue Eyes is a great choice, although competing on a date against Hugh Grant can be cumbersome. So I might also go As Good As It Gets. That's you versus Jack. So her gaze won't get towards Jack quite as much. Maybe Basic Instinct. It's pretty hot. I do apologize. The tracking is off in one particular scene. But other than that, still a fantastic choice. One of the greatest things I think we really want to do is stream movies. And there is a way to do that. So we're going to stream some movies on a Friday night. Hopefully people can join us. We'll have some commentary. If you don't like the movie, you should sit and watch it anyway, because Carolyn, as you remember, back in the day, if you rented a bad movie on Friday, you stuck with it. You still had to watch it.
Because you paid for it.
Well, there's no flipping Netflix for 3 hours looking for the perfect movie. If you rented Dragon Against Vampire, you were watching Dragon Against Vampire.
The attention to detail here is remarkable.
Thank you.
You really went all out. There's candy here, the smell of popcorn as you walk in. That alone, for me, brings back so many memories. Absolutely. Tell me about, those details that you really wanted to get right.
It was really down to almost everything I could remember from the store, but it was ensuring that everything was branded. Everything has Mega Hit written everywhere. Making sure we had shelves from bottom to top. Having the popcorn. Having the gumball machine where you can win a free movie if you get a black gumball. P.S. There are no black gumballs. We operate on some pretty tight margins here, as you can imagine. But we wanted it to be authentic. And part of that is, if you remember our arch nemesis Blockbuster, everything is branded. So we wanted everything to be branded and really reflect what it was like to walk into that video store. This is not a mom and pop shop, which was a very different experience. This is a chain video store that you would have walked into. And hopefully we got all the details right. As I look around, I'm pretty pleased, as you can tell. I'm like a proud papa.
Certainly is. Well, Corey will be sharing the Mega Hit experience online. He plans to create some fun videos and some sketches, and as he mentioned, stream some VHS movies on a Friday night. It'll be on the Mega Hit Facebook page, so you can follow along there.
To Afghanistan now, the world is watching how the Taliban governs the country as it faces enormous social, economic and security challenges. Now on the streets, some Afghans are peddling their possessions to survive the turmoil that's taking place all around them. Susan Ormiston reports.
There are lots of markets, flea markets in Kabul, but this one is new and sprung up after the Taliban took over. Some people here are bringing their household goods to try and sell them to make enough money just to survive. We met a man with a wheelbarrow full of old carpets from his house who's trying to sell them to make his rent. We talked to a woman whose 2 daughters are school teachers who haven't been paid in 3 months and are no longer teaching. The Taliban is in charge here in Afghanistan, but the looming economic crisis threatens to strangle this country. Meanwhile, there is tension too. Yesterday, an attack at a mosque here in Kabul, a suicide bomber targeted the family funeral of a top Taliban leader. When he blew himself up, he killed 8 people and injured many more. Overnight, the Taliban say they routed out a secret ISIS cell, and 3 of them blew themselves up rather than be caught. It is a sign of the tensions just underneath the surface as the Taliban tries to manage Afghanistan. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Kabul.
Well, we have some new details regarding the Catholic Church's multi-million-dollar compensation deal for residential school survivors. This comes after a successful court application by CBC News and the Globe and Mail. It reveals not only how church officials fought the federal government for years, but as Jason Warwick reports, there's also a ledger listing millions of dollars claimed as in-kind services.
The Catholic Church claims it provided $28 million worth of in-kind compensation to residential school survivors, but has repeatedly refused to say what that meant. CBC News has obtained an internal list of those Catholic claims. It includes support for drop-in centers or Indigenous student scholarships. But there are also millions in spending for things like sending nuns and priests to northern communities or for Bible study groups. One academic says the church was focused on converting Indigenous people to Catholicism, not helping survivors to heal.
It does appear to be some, well, to put it politely, some creative accounting. More importantly, not to fulfill the purpose and intent of the residential school settlement.
And in a separate court case last week in Saskatchewan, the CBC and the Globe and Mail succeeded in obtaining other files detailing the Catholic Church's 2 other promises to survivors. It promised to give its best efforts to fundraise $25 million, and less than $4 million was raised. It also promised $29 million in cash, but also came up short after spending millions on lawyers and administration. This month, Canada's bishops apologized and promised a renewed fundraising campaign with a goal of $30 million. One survivor says that's not nearly enough, considering the magnitude of the damage and the church's failure to keep its promises.
If it took money to destroy us, to destroy our way of life, it's going to take money for us to rebuild what we lost.
The lawyer for these Catholic entities said no one was available for an interview. But in an email, he said that all of these in-kind services were approved by an independent committee. As for AJ Felix, he says it's clear the church is still hiding the truth from survivors. And without the truth, he says there can be no reconciliation. Jason Warwick, CBC News, Saskatoon.
History was made at the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace today. For the first time ever, a regiment from the Royal Canadian Horse Artillery is mounting guard at the royal residence. CBC's Tessa Arcilia has more on today's ceremony in London.
Here at Buckingham Palace, history made this morning as the Royal Regiment of Canadian Artillery took on their duties as the Queen's Guard for the first time. That's in honor of their 150th anniversary. They're also the first overseas contingent to take on these duties since the start of the pandemic. Now, around 90 members took part in the changing of the guards, the 2 sides facing each other as they ceremonially handed off those responsibilities from one regiment to another. Now, the Canadian Artillery's military band also played some familiar tunes, the Hockey Night in Canada, as well as some songs by Great Big Sea, a nod to their Canadian roots. Now, I spoke earlier to Major Michael Groscher, and he said that the group had undergone 6 weeks of intensive training.
Generally, we don't do this specific type of drill in Canada. Normally, we're doing our job. We don't parade very often. When we do, it's for a change of commands. And especially over the last year and a half with the pandemic, we haven't done much drill. So the training was absolutely required. And it had to be top notch. We're doing it in front of the royal palaces, so it has to be perfect.
Well, taking part in today's ceremonies are batteries A and B of the Canadian artillery, and they have played an important historical role. So their formation in the late 19th century laid the groundwork for the establishment of Canada's professional army. So starting today until the 22nd of October, they will be performing those Queen's Guard duties, not just here in Buckingham Palace, but also at St. James's Palace, the Tower of London, and Windsor Castle. Tessa Arcilia, CBC News, London.
Space news now. William Shatner will soon get to do what his iconic TV character Captain Kirk has done for years, travel to space. Blue Origin announced today that the Canadian actor will be on their next space flight. That's set for October 12th. Shatner will be joined by 3 others aboard the space travel company's second launch with a crew. At 90 years of age, he'll become the oldest person in space. Now, he won't get to use his most famous line from Star Trek, to boldly go where no man has gone before. A few others have been there. Traveling not quite as fast as the transporter would send him, but still pretty cool for Captain Kirk.
I'll take a look at the forecast over the next couple of days. Things quiet down as we get towards midweek. Maybe a few showers up across parts of Labrador, but overall, Wednesday looking fairly nice across the island. We may see some showers skirt through as we get into the evening hours along the northeast, but overall, fairly quiet weather. Some showers as well across coastal Labrador as we get into Wednesday evening. And then for Thursday, another pretty quiet day, but things start to change for Labrador after a number of days above where you should be sitting. We're going to start to see some of that potential for some snow make it back into the forecast for Thursday night into Friday morning. That risk of a few flurries in the mix will certainly be in the forecast. But temperatures on Wednesday looking gorgeous. What a beautiful fall day. Much warmer than fall though. 16 to 17 degrees at this point is what it looks like across the island on Wednesday. Beautiful up across Labrador, but again, that chance of a few showers, like I mentioned, for the coast. As we get into Thursday, those temperatures are going to start to drop back down to where we should be sitting this time of year, 11, 12 degrees, maybe a little warmer along southern areas of the island. Keep that chance of showers in for the Avalon on Thursday, but then those temperatures start to drop for Labrador. So 7 degrees for you in Nain on Thursday, but still hanging on to the double digits for Happy Valley Goose Bay as we get into the afternoon on Thursday. After that, going to watch the next system, which looks like it will develop on Saturday. Now, temperatures are going to start to dip, though, as we get there Friday, Saturday, but also looks like some windy conditions and some rain, likely a lot of rain, will develop on Saturday. So certainly something to keep an eye on over the next couple of days. I certainly will be. And then as we head towards central Newfoundland, going to keep that cooler air or cooler temperatures in there. Also some showers, but depending on where that low pressure system develops, the further towards central we'll see it or not. And then for the west coast, you're looking at some showers through Friday and Saturday as well. Those temperatures dipping, overnight lows dipping into the single digits as well, down to the low single digits for you. And then for eastern Labrador, there's that chance of showers and or flurries I have in there for pretty much central and the higher elevations as well. 8 degrees on Friday. So whatever does fall as snow will likely fall in the morning hours, and that's because your overnight lows around 0 or 1. By Saturday, rebounding quite nicely though. Sun and cloud and 10 degrees, and then a little bit unsettled as we get into the weekend for western Labrador. But your overnight lows are going to start dipping well below 0, kind of like what you're seeing tonight. So I wanted to share this photo. Puffy clouds over Gooseberry Island rather. Tara shared that photo with us. If you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
I love those clouds.
Aren't they beautiful?
Yeah, they are puffy.
They are.
Just felt like saying puffy for
It's
no
a good
apparent
word.
reason. Yes, it is.
Not bad. All right, well, that's it for us for this Monday evening. Hope you can join us again tomorrow.
Yep, see you then.
Good night.